"You're cutting me off?" my ex-wife screamed after moving in with her personal trainer. I smiled, handed her the divorce papers, and watched her luxury life evaporate overnight. Original post. Sup, Reddit. I never in a million years thought I would be posting my life story on here, but I figured some of you might learn something from the absolute circus I've been through over the last year. So, here goes nothing. Grab a drink, because this is a long one. First, a little context about me. I, 36 male, started out as a grunt on commercial landscaping and hardscaping sites when I was 22. I was making decent money for a kid, but I was grinding 80-hour weeks in the blistering sun. It wasn't because I was some kind of masochistic workaholic. I just desperately wanted more than the life I came from. My dad bailed on us when I was 5 years old, so it was just me and my mom living in a cramped, rusted-out trailer where the heat only worked half the time and the roof leaked every time it rained. I grew up watching my mother work double shifts as a diner waitress, stretching every single dollar until it screamed just to keep the lights on. By the time I hit 25, I had learned enough trades to be dangerous. I knew grading, masonry, concrete pouring, heavy equipment operation, and basic structural engineering. I saved every penny I could and took night classes in business management and accounting. My two best buddies, Tom and Hector, were in the exact same boat. They were incredibly skilled with their hands, possessed an insane work ethic, but were completely sick and tired of breaking their backs to make other people rich. When I turned 27, we decided to take a massive leap of faith. We pooled our life savings, exactly $22,000 each, which felt like $1 billion to us back then, and launched our own commercial hardscaping and contracting business. We started entirely from the bottom. We took on the worst handyman jobs, fixing shattered driveways, building retaining walls in the mud, patching up brickwork, basically doing absolutely anything that paid the bills. Our corporate headquarters was my uninsulated, drafty garage. We had 3 folding tables from a yard sale and a second-hand coffee maker that shorted out the breaker every third time we used it. We lived on cheap ramen noodles and microwaved hot dogs. We worked 6-hour days, 7 days a week, and hustled like our absolute lives depended on it because they did. We had zero safety net. No rich parents to bail us out, no trust funds, just 3 exhausted guys with permanently calloused hands and massive dreams. Our first legitimate break came about 9 months into the grind, when we underbid a massive patio and retaining wall job for a corporate lawyer named Arthur. Arthur was a Harvard law grad, sharp as a tack, intimidating in a courtroom, but incredibly chill in person. He loved the meticulous quality of our masonry work, but when he looked at our paperwork, he laughed out loud. He told us flat out, "Your contracts are an absolute joke. One frivolous lawsuit from a crazy client, and you 3 are completely toast." I didn't have the cash to pay his hourly rate, so I offered him a full outdoor kitchen build in exchange for his legal services. He agreed, and that handshake kicked off both a rock-solid friendship and the foundational legal groundwork that would eventually save my entire life. By our 2nd year in business, Arthur had helped us incorporate properly, set up ironclad liability protections, and draft contracts that left us zero exposure. When he started recommending us to mid-sized commercial property developers who desperately needed reliable contractors, things finally started clicking into place. Fast forward 6 years. Our scrappy 3-man garage operation now has 45 full-time employees, 5 project managers, a massive commercial office downtown, a fleet of heavy machinery, and we clear well into the 7 figures annually. Growing up the way I did, watching my mom get taken advantage of by deadbeat boyfriends who would move into our trailer, live off her tips, and then bounce the second she couldn't support their lazy habits anymore, left a permanent mark on me. It made me hyper-aware of people who use others for financial gain. Enter Chloe, 33 female. I met Chloe at a high-end charity art gala about 7 years ago, back when my company was just starting to turn a real profit, but I was still heavily in the trenches. She was working as a senior account executive for a boutique marketing firm. She had this magnetic, confident energy, perfect hair, and an incredible sense of style. She was smoking hot, tall, fit the absolute whole package, but more than that, she seemed razor-sharp, fiercely independent, and incredibly driven. She had this unique ability to walk into a room and make every single person like her instantly. Within 8 months of dating, she moved into my place. A year after that, we got married. We had a beautiful, small ceremony in the mountains with about 70 of our closest friends and family. The first 3 years of our marriage were phenomenal. We were both grinding in our respective careers, building a fantastic life together. Right before the wedding, I bought a gorgeous, sprawling 5-bedroom estate in the suburbs. It was purchased entirely in my name, with my premarital funds, and Arthur made damn sure we signed an ironclad prenuptial agreement before I ever put a ring on her finger. Thank God for Arthur. I was aggressively expanding my hardscaping business across the state, and she was climbing the corporate ladder at her marketing firm. We traveled to Europe, hosted amazing barbecues with our friends, and I genuinely believed we were building a legacy together. Then, my company took off into the stratosphere, and everything changed. Looking back now with 20/20 hindsight, I can pinpoint the exact moment the shift happened. It was about 3 years ago when my company landed a massive $15 million municipal contract to redesign and build the hardscaping for a brand new commercial shopping district downtown. My personal annual income quadrupled practically overnight. At first, the changes in Chloe were subtle. She started taking 2-hour lunches with her work friends. Then, the daily complaints started. She began constantly whining about her boss being a toxic narcissist and her coworkers being insanely jealous of her talent. She would come home every night with exhausting stories about office politics, always positioning herself as the sole, competent victim, surrounded by utter incompetence. "They're just incredibly intimidated by my aura," she would say, rolling her eyes and sipping a $40 glass of wine. Not everyone can handle a powerful, independent woman in the corporate workspace. Soon, she was coming home later and later, always citing some vague, completely unverifiable excuse about networking happy hours or client synergy meetings. Whatever the hell that even means. When I would text her to see when she'd be home for dinner, her replies would roll in 3 hours later. Sorry. Phone was on silent. Still grinding with clients. The harsh reality was that she was rapidly losing interest in her actual career and becoming vastly more interested in the luxurious lifestyle my new income bracket could effortlessly provide. Then came the inevitable career crisis. "I'm just not spiritually fulfilled in corporate marketing anymore," she dramatically announced over a $300 steak dinner one night. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought she'd strain a muscle when I gently suggested she ask for a transfer or more responsibility at her firm. "You just don't get it, Marcus. My soul is being crushed. I need to do something meaningful with my life. Something creative." I loved her, so of course, I supported her. I told her she could take some time to figure things out, maybe explore some side passions while keeping her current job for stability. "Nope, I cannot possibly focus on manifesting my future if I am violently tethered to a toxic present," she explained, speaking as if quitting a 6-figure job with absolutely zero backup plan was the most logical, universally accepted concept in the world. I foolishly supported her decision. Big mistake. After 2 agonizing months of soul-searching, which essentially consisted of her spending 5 days a week at luxury day spas and dropping thousands at high-end boutiques, she finally unveiled her grand master plan. She was going to become a luxury lifestyle consultant. Because she had always dressed impeccably, and apparently a few of her wealthy socialite friends had complimented her outfits, she believed she was destined to be the next big lifestyle guru. It sounded slightly ridiculous to me, but I wanted to be a supportive husband. I fully funded her new venture. I paid $8,200 for her to get some completely meaningless certification from an exclusive online coaching program. I paid a top-tier web developer $5,000 to build her a sleek, modern website. I covered all of her startup costs, around $18,000 for initial luxury inventory, custom embossed business cards, and a massive professional photo shoot. She seemed genuinely pumped about it, and I was just relieved to see her passionate about something other than complaining. 6 months into her new business, the excitement entirely vanished. It turns out, dealing with demanding, wealthy clients is actually difficult work. Building a brand from scratch requires hustle. She started taking 3 or 4 mental health days a week to cope with the overwhelming stress of entrepreneurship. "You just don't understand the creative process," she would snap whenever I gently suggested she perhaps implement a standard daily work schedule or, I don't know, actually try to market her services. "This isn't pouring concrete, Marcus. Creative energy doesn't function on a rigid 9-to-5 matrix." Meanwhile, I was working 70-hour weeks, managing a rapidly expanding enterprise, dealing with supply chain nightmares, and managing a massive payroll. I would come home absolutely dead on my feet, covered in dust, only to find her sprawled on our custom Italian leather sofa, mindlessly scrolling through Instagram, completely surrounded by glossy shopping bags from Saks, Fifth Avenue, Prada, and Nordstrom. They're business expenses, she would say with a massive sigh when I asked her about a $5,100 charge on our joint American Express card. I am building my personal brand aesthetic. Not that a guy who wears steel-toed boots would understand high-level visual marketing. Our intimate life, which had been incredibly passionate and frequent during our first few years, evaporated entirely. We went from being intimate 4 or 5 times a week to maybe once a month, if I was lucky. And when it did happen, she always acted incredibly put upon, like she was performing a tedious chore just to get me to shut up. If I ever tried to talk about the distance between us, she would immediately flip the script. God, is sex literally all you ever think about? You're suffocating me. You're literally pressuring me and crossing my boundaries right now. Then she would violently storm off to our master bathroom and lock herself in the tub for 3 hours. She had become an absolute master at making me feel like the villain whenever I dared to question her behavior. Then, she introduced me to Vanessa, 38 female. Vanessa was a twice-divorced walking red flag who had recently become Chloe's new absolute best friend. I knew exactly what Vanessa was the second she walked into my house. She was draped head to toe in designer labels she didn't pay for, constantly checking her reflection in any shiny surface, and possessed a laugh that managed to sound simultaneously completely fake and deeply condescending. Vanessa had made a highly lucrative career out of living off massive divorce settlements. Her Instagram feed was a masterclass in portraying a high-maintenance, jet-setting lifestyle with absolutely zero visible means of actual income. Vanessa constantly fed Chloe a steady diet of toxic, pseudo-empowerment garbage about knowing your worth as a goddess and how real men are providers who never question a queen. Vanessa basically had a PhD in gold digging with a minor in aggressive alimony collection, and she had officially appointed herself as Chloe's new life coach. Suddenly, Chloe was spending all her free time with Vanessa. There were spontaneous weekend trips to Vegas, luxurious wine-tasting tours in Napa Valley, and massive shopping sprees, all entirely funded by my bank account. Chloe would come back from these trips, giggling about how many wealthy finance bros had hit on them at exclusive clubs, bragging about the thousands of dollars in free bottle service they had finessed. But the financial drain wasn't even the worst part. Chloe began completely adopting Vanessa's toxic mindset. She would casually drop deeply insulting comments while I was eating dinner, saying things like, "Men really need to understand that completely funding their wives' lifestyle isn't optional. It's the absolute bare minimum of masculinity." Or, my personal favorite, Vanessa says a high-value man never ever looks at his wife's credit card statements. I started noticing incredibly sketchy behavior. Chloe would violently snatch her phone away and turn the screen completely out of my view whenever I walked into the room. Her Instagram, which used to be aesthetic shots of coffee and clothes, was suddenly flooded with incredibly revealing gym selfies. She wasn't even trying to be subtle about it. Then, she started constantly bringing up her newest client, a guy named Tristan. Tristan was a holistic wellness coach and personal trainer with about 60,000 Instagram followers, mostly thirsty women. According to Chloe, Tristan desperately needed her luxury styling expertise to rebrand his fitness empire. Suddenly, she was spending an enormous amount of time consulting with him. Their supposed styling sessions always ran until 11:00 p.m. or midnight. She would come home flushed, completely avoiding eye contact, and smelling strongly of cheap men's cologne. Now, I am not a stupid man. I grew up on the streets, and I know when I'm being played. But I also know better than to make explosive accusations without concrete, undeniable proof. Plus, I was legitimately swamped with managing a multi-million-dollar company, so I decided to keep my mouth shut, watch, and wait. My business partner Tom was the first one to call it out. "Dude, are you all right? You've been staring at that same blueprint for 20 minutes, he asked me one afternoon in the office. I tried to brush it off, blaming it on lack of sleep, but Tom wasn't having it. He closed the office door and looked me dead in the eye. "Listen to me, Marcus. My older brother went through this exact same song and dance 3 years ago. Just protect yourself, all right? Lock down your accounts. Keep records of every single thing she does. Do not let her blindside you." Tom had watched his brother lose half his pension and his entire house to an ex-wife who had contributed absolutely nothing to the marriage except entitlement and infidelity. That exact night, I started a secure, encrypted digital journal. I documented dates, times, bizarre excuses, suspicious expenses, and behavioral patterns. I didn't do it because I wanted to be a paranoid creep. I did it because my gut instinct was screaming at me that a massive storm was coming, and I needed to build a shelter. I wasn't wrong. The last 3 months of our marriage were a masterclass in psychological manipulation, gaslighting, and blatant disrespect. Chloe was physically occupying my house, but mentally, she had completely checked out. She was permanently glued to her phone, completely ignoring me when I spoke, and making lavish weekend plans without ever consulting me. We hadn't been intimate in over 3 months. There was always a convenient excuse. She had a headache, she was bloated, she was stressed about her brand. One night, I tried to gently initiate a kiss while we were watching a movie, and she literally laughed in my face, pushed my chest away, and said, "Yeah, absolutely not happening. I have an incredibly early morning meditation session with a client." She then proceeded to stay awake until 3:00 a.m., loudly watching reality TV in the living room. She also started taking vicious, unprovoked digs at my appearance and my friends. "You know, you really should let me completely overhaul your wardrobe. Those work boots make you look like a day laborer. It's embarrassing when my friends come over." She would roll her eyes whenever I tried to talk about a massive contract I had just secured for the business, openly questioning my intelligence while simultaneously blowing through $8,000 of my money on a single business research trip to Miami. "You know," she sneered one afternoon while I was meticulously reviewing quarterly tax documents at the kitchen island, "if you actually had any real entrepreneurial vision, you would hire people to do that tedious nerd stuff for you. Tristan says that truly successful visionaries delegate the small stuff so they can focus on their aura." Tristan. Yep. That absolute clown. 2 massive events happened in rapid succession that showed me exactly what her endgame was. First, about 6 weeks ago, I came home unexpectedly early from a massive commercial grading project. We had finished the site prep 2 days ahead of schedule. It was a random Thursday, right around 1:30 p.m. Chloe had absolutely no idea I was coming home. I quietly unlocked the front door, kicked off my boots, and walked toward the kitchen. I stopped dead in my tracks in the hallway when I heard voices. Chloe and Vanessa were sitting at my massive marble kitchen island, day-drinking expensive champagne, completely engrossed in a hushed conversation. "You just need to make sure your exit strategy is completely bulletproof first," Vanessa was saying, her voice dripping with venom. "Get all your finances completely separated and secured before you drop the bomb on him. My second husband, that cheap bastard, tried to hide his offshore accounts. But my forensic accountant found every single penny. These blue-collar types always think they're so smart, but they're easy to bleed dry if you play the victim." I know, Chloe sighed, swirling her glass. "I just can't stand looking at him anymore. I'm just waiting for the right moment to maximize the payout." They both physically jumped and completely froze when I stepped around the corner. Chloe recovered first, slapping on a terrifyingly fake, overly bright smile. "Oh, Marcus, you're home so early." We were just talking about Vanessa's friend. When I calmly asked what exit strategy they were discussing, Vanessa didn't miss a beat, claiming they were counseling a mutual friend who was trying to escape a severely abusive marriage. I just stared at them for a long, uncomfortable moment. I nodded slowly, not buying a single syllable of their garbage, and went upstairs to shower. Instead of blowing up, screaming, and confronting them, which is exactly what they wanted, so they could frame me as an unhinged abuser, I decided to play the ultimate long game. I am a strategist. I build foundations for a living. I know how to construct a trap. The second I got into my truck the next morning, I called Arthur and laid out every single detail of what I had heard. He answered on the first ring. He didn't even hesitate. "Marcus, she is actively planning to blindside you, file for divorce, and gut you for half of everything you've built. We are going to get ahead of this immediately, but we are going to play this completely by the book. Cold, calculated, and perfectly legal." I drove straight to Arthur's downtown office. We sat in his heavily soundproofed conference room and built a war plan. Rule number 1. Absolutely everything I did from that moment forward had to be 100% legal, ethical, and fully documented. Rule number 2. We needed to establish a legally undeniable pattern of constructive abandonment. This meant I needed to meticulously track her behavior to prove she was emotionally, financially, and physically checking out of the marriage long before any papers were filed. Rule number 3. Protect the premarital assets and the business with an impenetrable wall of forensic documentation. For the next 4 weeks, I executed Arthur's advice flawlessly, all while acting completely, blissfully ignorant around Chloe. I was the perfect, oblivious husband. Behind the scenes, Arthur and I hired a top-tier forensic accountant. We documented the exact valuation of my business, creating massive binders of records proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that the company's massive growth was the direct result of my premarital investments, my 70-hour work weeks, and my personal labor. We proved Chloe had absolutely zero involvement in the company's operations or growth. I legally installed hidden, compliant security cameras in the common areas of the house, living room, kitchen, garage, and entryways, which is 100% legal in my one-party consent state per Arthur's strict instructions. All footage was automatically backed up to a secure, encrypted cloud server that only Arthur and I had access to. I built a massive, color-coded spreadsheet tracking her pattern of constructive abandonment. Every single missed family event, every single night, she didn't come home until 3 a.m., every refusal of intimacy, and every sign she had checked out. Arthur gave me one incredibly strict warning. Do absolutely nothing to her finances yet. Do not cut off her credit cards. Do not lock her out of the bank accounts. If you cut her off before she officially leaves or before we file, her lawyer will immediately scream financial abuse and coercion to the judge, and it will destroy our case. Give her enough rope to hang herself. Wait until she makes the physical move to leave. I legally recorded several audio conversations in shared spaces when I was physically present in the room. I cataloged every single financial record. I dug through the joint accounts and discovered she had spent over $9,500 on luxury gifts. Rolex accessories, designer gym bags, high-end cologne. All shipped directly to Tristan over a 3-month period. She had labeled these massive expenditures in our budget app as business marketing development. I created a meticulous, photographed inventory of every single valuable item in the house, complete with original receipts proving what I owned prior to the marriage. Then, the final nail in the coffin arrived. Chloe was in the shower. Her phone buzzed relentlessly on the bathroom vanity. Normally, I would never invade her privacy, but the screen lit up with a preview message that made my blood run cold. Tristan. Babe, I seriously cannot wait for next week. Once you're fully moved into my place and we don't have to hide from the construction worker anymore, it's going to be amazing. Did you secure the cash yet? I calmly picked up my own phone, snapped a crystal clear photo of her lock screen, and set her phone back down exactly as I found it. Evidence secured. But I still didn't confront her. I needed her to initiate the departure. Voluntary physical abandonment, coupled with infidelity, would make my legal case entirely bulletproof. The trap was fully set. I just needed her to step into it. That following Monday started like any other mundane day. I went to the job site early, poured some concrete, had a highly productive meeting with my foreman, and stopped at a high-end butcher shop to pick up some beautiful prime ribeye steaks on the way home. Chloe had been incredibly distant all weekend, constantly texting and taking hushed phone calls in the guest bedroom with the door locked. But I just smiled and acted like the clueless, happy provider she thought I was. If the bomb was finally going to drop, I wanted to be ready. I was standing on the back patio, tongs in hand, grilling the steaks, when she walked through the sliding glass door. She was fresh from yet another exhaustive business lunch with Vanessa that had somehow stretched into a 7-hour affair. According to her Instagram stories, showing them downing expensive cocktails at a rooftop bar. She was aggressively scrolling through her phone, not even bothering to look up at me, when she dropped the absolute nuke. I'm moving out tonight. I need space. She said it with the exact same casual, bored tone someone might use to order a black coffee at a drive-thru. I stopped flipping the steaks. I slowly turned around and looked at her. I felt an overwhelming, bizarre sense of absolute calm wash over me. The agonizing waiting game was finally over. The moment had arrived, and instead of the shock, devastation, or rage she clearly expected, I just felt a massive wave of relief. Okay, I said quietly. Where exactly are you going? She let out a massive, theatrical sigh, acting like my simple question was the most annoying burden she had ever endured. Tristan is being incredibly gracious and helping me out with a place to stay. You know, the personal trainer I've been styling? He has a spare room. It's just temporary until I manifest my next steps. Right. The client she had been screwing for the last 6 months. I was entirely positive that spare room was just his bed, but I didn't break character. If that's what you genuinely feel you need to do, I said, turning my back to her and tending to the steaks, which were starting to sear beautifully. She stood there in stunned silence for a few seconds. She looked deeply confused. and almost insulted by how incredibly chill I was being. I guarantee Vanessa had prepped her for a massive, screaming blowout where I would fall to my knees, beg her to stay, and offer her anything she wanted. Not happening. What she didn't realize was that I had been mentally grieving and checking out of this marriage for the last 6 months, as I watched her systematically destroy everything we built. "I'm completely serious, Marcus," she snapped, her voice rising, trying to provoke a reaction. "Do not try to contact me. I need absolute zero contact to figure things out on my own and heal my energy." "Understood," I said, not looking back. "Your choice. I won't contact you." She huffed angrily, stomped upstairs, and came back down 20 minutes later, dragging 2 massive designer suitcases. She grabbed the keys to her 2023 Lexus SUV, which was leased entirely under my company's corporate account for $1,350 a month, and walked out the front door without another word. Just like that. 7 years of marriage, completely discarded like a used napkin. I calmly pulled the steaks off the grill, sat alone at my massive kitchen island, ate my dinner in total silence, and took a deep breath to process the reality of the situation. Then, I immediately picked up my phone and activated the nuclear codes Arthur and I had prepared. Update 1. First things first, I texted Arthur. Me. She just walked out with her bags, said she's moving in with Tristan, and demanded zero contact. Arthur. She took the bait perfectly. The trap is sprung. Document every single second of this right now while it's fresh. I am drafting the final filing. I immediately set up my phone and recorded a sworn video statement detailing exactly what had just transpired, specifically quoting her explicit demand for zero contact and her admission that she was moving into Tristan's house. I logged into the cloud server and permanently backed up all the security footage, showing her voluntarily packing her bags, grabbing the keys, and walking out the door without any coercion or argument. I was capturing irrefutable, high-definition proof of marital abandonment in real time. Arthur was at my house at 6:30 a.m. the next morning with a massive stack of perfectly prepared divorce filings. We reviewed every single page over black coffee, adding the final, devastating details about her departure the night before. We drove to the courthouse and filed the papers the absolute second the clerk's office opened. With the legal filing officially stamped and in the system, Arthur looked at me and nodded. "The financial restraints are off, Marcus. Cut the cord." It was time to execute the financial phase of the plan, and let me tell you, it was glorious. First on the chopping block, her supplementary American Express Platinum card, the exact card she had maxed out 4 separate times this year alone on designer handbags, luxury spa retreats, and networking dinners with Tristan. I called the concierge line directly. "Yes, hi. I need to permanently cancel a supplementary card on my account immediately." "No, do not pause it. Terminate it entirely." Took exactly 4 minutes. Done. Next, her Visa Black Card. Same exact process. Click, gone into the void. Next, the automatic monthly transfer of $4,500 from my corporate business account to her personal checking account. The allowance that fully funded her lavish self-care lifestyle, while her completely failed styling business barely generated enough revenue to pay for her Starbucks habit. I logged into the banking portal, found the recurring transfer, and clicked delete. Financial independence achieved faster than she could say Gucci summer sale. Next, our unlimited data family phone plan, which was entirely in my name and paid for by my company. The plan included her, me, and her mother, who I had generously added 3 years ago when she fell on hard times. I didn't shut their lines off entirely. I didn't want to seem completely vindictive to a judge, but I logged in and permanently disabled all premium data, mobile hotspot capabilities, and international roaming. Chloe absolutely loved posting aesthetic Instagram stories from the first-class lounge during her inspiration trips. That era was officially over. Welcome to 3G speeds, babe. Finally, the absolute masterpiece, her Lexus SUV lease. I called my corporate accountant and instructed him to immediately remove Chloe from the company's authorized driver insurance list. I then told him to start the formal legal process with the dealership to voluntarily surrender and return the vehicle, as it was no longer required for company use. I spent the next 3 hours turning my house into a digital fortress. I changed every single password, the home security system, the garage door codes, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, the Wi-Fi network. I went to the bank in person and moved every single penny from our joint checking account, which was funded entirely by me anyway, into a secure private account in my name only, leaving exactly $50 in the joint account to avoid overdraft fees. She wanted space. She wanted zero contact. Fine. I was giving her the absolute premium, platinum tier package of independence and sending her directly to the moon. Arthur and I had also finalized a devastating evidence packet. We had the time-stamped security footage of her coming home at 3 a.m., the audio recordings of the exit strategy conversation with Vanessa, documented patterns of extreme financial dissipation, wasting marital assets on an affair partner, and the photo of Tristan's text message. Everything was meticulously organized, duplicated, and stored both physically in a fireproof safe and digitally on secure servers. When Arthur asked me how long I thought it would take before she needed to be formally served by the process server, I just laughed. Keep the server on standby near my neighborhood tonight. Wait until she tries to buy a $200 sushi dinner and realizes every piece of plastic in her wallet is a useless piece of trash. She'll come screaming back here. I was entirely right. That afternoon, I called a mandatory all-hands meeting with my executive team at the office. I didn't trauma dump or share explicit personal details. I just professionally informed them that I was initiating a high-conflict divorce and might need some scheduling flexibility over the coming weeks. My business partners, Tom and Hector, immediately closed ranks. "Whatever you need, brother," Tom said, slapping my shoulder. "We will handle the site management. You just focus on burying her." Hector, always the pragmatic one, just nodded. "Make sure the corporate accounts are locked tight. We've got 45 families depending on this company." I assured them everything was completely bulletproof. I went home, cooked myself a massive steak, and slept better that night than I had in 3 solid years. It felt like a 500-pound boulder had been lifted off my chest. Thursday night rolled around. I was in my home office, reviewing some architectural blueprints for a new commercial plaza, when someone started violently pounding on my heavy oak front door at exactly 9:45 p.m. I pulled up the security camera feed on my iPad. There was Chloe, standing furiously on my front porch. Her usually flawless hair was shoved into a messy, chaotic ponytail. Her makeup was smudged, and most notably, the leased Lexus SUV was nowhere in sight. She had clearly taken an Uber. Karma had arrived via rideshare, and it was beautiful. I calmly walked to the door, opened it, but firmly planted myself in the doorway, physically blocking her from stepping inside my home. Down the street, parked in the shadows, I saw the headlights of the process server's nondescript sedan flick on. I discreetly tapped the send button on a pre-written text to him. "Now." "My card was completely declined," she shrieked, entirely skipping any form of greeting. She looked unhinged. "The Amex! The Visa! Both of them!" I was at dinner with Tristan and some massive potential investors, and the waiter brought my card back cut in half. It was incredibly humiliating. "What the hell is wrong with the bank?" I looked at her, my face completely blank. "There's nothing wrong with the bank, Chloe. I canceled the cards." She stared at me like I had just started speaking Mandarin. You, what? You can't just cancel my cards. Why would you do that? You can't cut me off. That is my money too." Her voice was echoing down the quiet suburban street. I kept my voice low, calm, and completely devoid of emotion. "You explicitly told me you were moving out. You told me you were moving in with Tristan. You demanded I never contact you again. You voluntarily abandoned this household. Therefore, you no longer have access to the household's financial resources. You are an independent woman now. Manifest your own money." She started hyperventilating, trying to force a fake crying spell. "You abusive piece of trash. You can't just cut me off. We are legally married. Half of everything you own is mine. My attorney's going to absolutely destroy your entire life." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the process server walking briskly up the driveway, clutching a thick manila envelope. "Actually," I said, leaning casually against the doorframe, "I filed for divorce yesterday morning. The financial severing is completely legal and documented." Her fake tears instantly vanished, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated panic. You, what? You filed?" "No." "You can't do that." "I just said I needed a temporary break to figure things out. I never said I wanted a divorce." She desperately tried to backpedal, completely denying the affair, claiming Tristan was just a spiritual mentor. but I cut her off instantly. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and hit play on a voice memo. My phone loudly broadcasted the crystal-clear audio of her sitting in my kitchen with Vanessa, explicitly plotting her exit strategy and talking about maximizing her payout. Her jaw literally dropped. She went completely pale. Everything is documented, Chloe. Legally, ethically, and comprehensively. I said, my voice ice cold. Before she could even formulate a lie to respond, the process server stepped up onto the porch right behind her. Chloe, last name? He asked politely. She spun around, startled. Yes, you've been served. He firmly pressed the thick envelope into her chest, turned around, and briskly walked back to his car. She stood there in the cold night air, staring down at the massive stack of legal documents in her hands. The reality finally shattered her delusion. She realized in that exact moment that this was not going according to Vanessa's gold digger playbook. She was not the one calling the shots. She was completely outmatched. You will severely regret this, she hissed, her face contorting into pure hatred. I am going to take half of your entire company. I built you. Without me networking at those galas, you'd still be a dirty laborer working out of a filthy garage. I deserve what's mine. I didn't say a word. I just slowly closed the heavy front door until it clicked shut, locking the deadbolt loudly. Through the security camera iPad, I sat back and watched her completely lose her mind on my front porch. She screamed into the night sky, violently kicked one of my massive ceramic planters, clearly hurting her foot in the process, as she started hopping around cursing and frantically ripped open the envelope, desperately scanning the legal jargon. Eventually, another Uber pulled up to the curb. She limped down the driveway, clutching the papers, looking absolutely deranged. It was an Oscar-worthy performance, if the Academy gave out awards for Best Tantrum Thrown by a Narcissist when the ATM finally closes. I poured myself a glass of expensive scotch and texted Arthur. Papers served. Meltdown complete. Planter damaged. His response. Perfect. Now we fortify the walls and wait for the counterattack. He wasn't wrong. The next 3 weeks were an absolute, unmitigated circus. First came the desperate calls to my corporate office. My poor office manager, Sarah, fielded 8 separate calls on a single Monday from Chloe. Chloe demanded to speak to me regarding a life-or-death financial emergency. And when that didn't work, she tried claiming her mother was in the hospital, and she needed my insurance info. Boss, your wife is relentlessly calling, Sarah said, standing in my doorway looking highly uncomfortable. She's crying hysterically about her mom. I thanked Sarah, told her to permanently block Chloe's number from the entire corporate phone system, and assured her, she is not my wife anymore, and her mother is perfectly healthy. If she shows up in the lobby, call building security immediately. Then, the flying monkeys were unleashed. Mutual friends started blowing up my phone with guilt trip texts. Hey man, Chloe is in a really dark place. Kind of a cold move filing so fast without trying counseling, one text read. You left her with nothing, Marcus. That's financial abuse, read another from one of her sorority sisters. I didn't argue. I didn't get emotional. I just copied and pasted the exact same, legally approved response to every single one of them. Chloe voluntarily abandoned our marriage to move into the home of her affair partner, Tristan. I am simply respecting her demand for zero contact and proceeding with the legal dissolution of the marriage. Please respect my privacy. Most of them instantly backed off in shock. Our entire friend group fractured down the middle. The real ones, like my buddy Trevor, who had known me since college, stayed fiercely loyal. Dude, I always got the most sinister vibes from her. Trevor admitted over beers. She was way too perfectly curated. It felt like she was playing a character the whole time. Others, however, took Chloe's side. One guy, a pompous tech bro named Jared, who we used to vacation with, actually had the audacity to call me and lecture me about fighting for the vows. This was incredibly ironic, considering Jared had actively cheated on his own pregnant wife twice that I personally knew of. I told Jared to go to hell and blocked him. When the private guilt trips failed, Chloe launched a full-scale public social media campaign. She updated her Instagram bio to healing from narcissistic abuse and financial trauma, and started aggressively posting aesthetic quotes about controlling men and finding your truth in the darkness. It was incredibly subtle. Nothing screams I'm healing quite like aggressively trashing your soon-to-be ex-husband on the internet while actively sleeping in the bed of your personal trainer. She even had the sheer audacity to launch a GoFundMe campaign titled, Help Chloe Escape Financial Abuse and Rebuild Her Life. She set the fundraising goal at an insulting $60,000. It managed to raise exactly $315, mostly from Vanessa and a few gullible distant relatives, before it was abruptly nuked from the platform. Arthur had swiftly sent GoFundMe's legal department a terrifying cease and desist letter, complete with time-stamped video evidence of her voluntary departure and undeniable proof of her lavish spending habits, proving her claims of abuse were entirely fraudulent. But the absolute boss-level encounter arrived in the form of Vanessa, the divorce coach herself. Tuesday night, my phone rang from a blocked number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "What the actual hell do you think you are doing, you arrogant piece of trash?" Vanessa screeched so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Filing for divorce? Without even giving her a chance to negotiate? Cutting her off financially? She built that entire company with you. Nobody in this city respects a man who can't even provide for his own wife. You are going to be permanently blacklisted in the local business community. I let her rant for 2 full minutes until she ran out of breath. Then I set her straight. "Listen to me very carefully, Vanessa," I said, my voice completely deadpan. She walked out by her own choice. She explicitly told me not to contact her. And no, she did absolutely nothing to build my company. She spent her days dressing wealthy housewives while I was pouring concrete at 4 a.m. As for providing, I provided a multi-million-dollar lifestyle that she threw in the garbage for a yoga instructor. Vanessa scoffed, trying to regain the high ground. "My attorney Bradley is going to absolutely ruin you in court. He destroys guys like you for breakfast." "That's fascinating," I replied. "Make sure Bradley knows about the $9,500 in marital funds Chloe secretly funneled to Tristan over the last 3 months. I'm sure the judge will love hearing about her funding her affair partner's lifestyle with my money." There was a dead heavy silence on the line. Interesting. Chloe hadn't told Vanessa about the money trail to Tristan. Vanessa recovered quickly, pivoting her attack. "Tristan is just being a perfect gentleman and supporting her through severe trauma, which is vastly more than I can say for you. Anyway, she needs to come by the house tomorrow to get her essential belongings." "She has nothing. Her belongings are meticulously boxed up in the garage," I informed her. "She can schedule a specific time with my attorney to collect them, provided she brings a neutral third-party witness and signs the inventory list. And tell her to stop trying to break in." "She wasn't trying to break in," Vanessa yelled. "The 4K security cameras caught her jiggling the back door handle for 10 minutes yesterday afternoon," I replied. "If she steps foot on my premarital property without legal authorization again, I will have her arrested for trespassing." "Have a great night, Vanessa." I hung up and blocked the number. The utter entitlement was staggering. They genuinely, deeply believed that Chloe could violently blow up our marriage, abandon the home, openly live with her affair partner, and still retain unrestricted access to my bank accounts and luxury cars. It was the classic have your cake and eat it too delusion that I had seen destroy so many good men. But I had read the playbook, and I had Arthur. Not this time. A few days later, Chloe tried an incredibly desperate new angle. She actually showed up at one of my active commercial construction sites. My site foreman, Hector, called me frantically. "Boss, your wife is down here at the Plaza project. She's walking around without a hard hat, harassing the subcontractors, and trying to ask the client representatives about our profit margins. Should I have the police haul her out?" I told Hector to keep her far away from the clients, but not to make a massive physical scene. Just tell her she is trespassing on an active construction zone, violating OSHA regulations, and if she doesn't leave the perimeter in exactly 60 seconds, you are calling the cops. By the time I drove down there, 20 minutes later, she was sitting in the passenger seat of Vanessa's Range Rover across the street, glaring at the site. I completely ignored her, put my hard hat on, and went straight to work reviewing concrete forms. After an hour of me completely ignoring her existence, they finally drove away. That exact same evening, I received a chilling text from an unknown number. "You think you're so smart playing these legal games? Watch your back. I know highly connected people in this city who can make your little dirt-pushing business disappear overnight." I immediately took a screenshot and forwarded it to Arthur. "Arthur, threats now." "Excellent." She is completely out of ammunition and panicking. I'm adding this to the harassment file. The very next morning, I woke up to discover that someone had aggressively review-bombed my company. Over 30 one-star negative reviews had been posted overnight on Google, Yelp, and Facebook. All of them were from brand new, faceless accounts with zero post history. The reviews made wild, defamatory claims that my company overcharged by 300%, used cheap, substandard materials, and that I personally harassed female clients. I didn't even blink. I called Arthur. Within 48 hours, Arthur's legal team had contacted the legal departments of all 3 platforms, providing concrete evidence of a targeted, malicious harassment campaign related to an ongoing high-conflict divorce. Every single fake review was scrubbed from the internet. We also filed a formal police report documenting the anonymous death threat and the digital harassment, adding a massive layer of armor to my legal case. Update 2. The legal battle officially kicked off, and it was straight out of a bizarre courtroom comedy. Chloe's attorney, a slick, aggressive guy named Bradley, sent over a formal demand letter that was genuinely hilarious. They demanded immediate, temporary spousal support of $15,000 per month, the immediate return of the leased Lexus SUV, and exclusive use of the marital home. The letter vehemently denied all claims of infidelity, framing Tristan as a critical mental health support system, and claimed Chloe was forced to flee the home due to my severe emotional neglect and financial terrorism. Arthur literally laughed out loud in his office when we read it. They are aggressively fishing with zero bait on the hook. They have absolutely nothing. Arthur drafted a response that was legally flawless, but essentially translated to, "Go pound sand." We officially offered her a one-time, lump sum payment of $8,000 as a complete settlement for all claims, contingent on her signing a full release and a strict non-disclosure agreement. Bradley responded with furious, aggressive threats of dragging me through a brutal public trial that would ruin my company's reputation. Arthur responded by dropping the absolute hammer. He sent Bradley our entire evidence packet. He sent the timestamped security footage proving constructive abandonment. He sent the forensic accounting reports detailing her blowing through over $110,000 in the past 14 months on luxury personal items while contributing exactly $0 to the household. He sent the receipts of the $9,500 in gifts sent to Tristan. And the absolute kill shot. Arthur included the meticulously documented business valuation reports, dating all the way back to the garage days, proving undeniably that the company's massive growth was funded entirely by my premarital investments and my labor. The documentation created an impenetrable legal fortress, establishing the business as 100% separate, premarital property, completely insulated from marital division. Bradley's next communication had a drastically different tone. Suddenly, the aggressive threats vanished. Now, they were highly open to reasonable mediation and hoping to resolve this unfortunate matter amicably to save both parties unnecessary legal fees. It is incredibly funny how fast "I will destroy you in court" turns into "let's be reasonable adults" when they are suddenly slammed in the face with irrefutable documented reality. Meanwhile, my personal life was thriving. I was hitting the gym 6 days a week, eating clean, and completely throwing myself into my work. Without Chloe constantly draining my energy and my bank accounts, my company secured 2 massive new commercial contracts. My business partners noticed the massive shift in my demeanor. "Man, you are an absolute machine lately," Tom laughed after we closed a $3 million municipal plaza deal. "Divorce looks incredibly good on you, brother." I even started a passion project I had put off for years. I bought a rusted-out 1969 Ford Mustang Mach 1 and started fully restoring it in my garage. Chloe had always screamed that classic cars were white trash garbage that ruined the aesthetic of the house. Now, my garage, my time, and my money were entirely my own. Eventually, Chloe had to schedule a formal time to collect her remaining belongings. She showed up on a Saturday morning, and she brought Tristan. Tristan was exactly what you would expect. He was tall, heavily tanned, incredibly muscular, in a useless aesthetic way, and possessed the vacant stare of a golden retriever. He looked incredibly uncomfortable and out of his depth. He stood awkwardly in my grand foyer, shifting his weight, while Chloe and Vanessa aggressively tore through the meticulously packed boxes I had left in the living room. Arthur's paralegal was standing in the corner with a clipboard, silently observing and checking off inventory items. I stood leaning against the wall, drinking an espresso, watching the chaos unfold. The vibe was insanely tense. At one point, Chloe reached into a box and pulled out my custom Rolex Submariner. "I'm taking this," she announced, trying to shove it into her purse. "I picked it out for you, so it's essentially mine. I can sell it to cover my legal fees." "Absolutely not," I said, stepping forward. "That watch was a corporate gift from my business partners when we landed the Westbrook contract. I have the signed card and the corporate receipt proving they purchased it." "Put it down," That is complete BS, she snapped, her face turning red. What kind of petty man takes back gifts from his wife? Ex-wife, I corrected calmly. And the kind of man who has meticulous documentation of every single asset in this house. Put the watch on the table, Chloe, or the paralegal will call the police for attempted theft. She slammed the watch down on the table, practically vibrating with rage. Vanessa wouldn't shut her mouth the entire time, constantly making snide comments. You're seriously keeping that massive abstract painting? Chloe curated that for you. You have absolutely zero taste without her guiding you. Yes, Vanessa, I smiled. I am keeping the painting I paid $6,000 for with my own credit card. Thank you for your concern. The absolute highlight of the morning was watching them attempt to load her massive hoard of belongings into Tristan's vehicle. Tristan didn't drive a truck. Tristan drove a tiny, eco-friendly Toyota Prius. It was a logistical nightmare. They had 8 massive suitcases, 15 garbage bags full of designer shoes, and 5 heavy boxes. Watching Tristan sweat profusely as he tried to aggressively shove a massive Louis Vuitton trunk into the back seat of a Prius was pure, unadulterated comedy. It was like watching a clown car operate in reverse. But instead of clowns coming out, it was the catastrophic consequences of Chloe's life choices desperately trying to fit in. You know, the Lexus SUV would have been incredibly useful for this, I casually remarked from the front porch as Tristan slammed the trunk on a bag. Snapping a zipper, Chloe shot me a glare so venomous it could have melted steel. Eventually, they had to call an Uber XL SUV just to haul the overflow of her shoes and coats. As Tristan's heavily weighted Prius finally scraped its undercarriage pulling out of my driveway, the paralegal turned to me and chuckled. You dodged a massive bullet, sir. Fast forward 6 months. The final court date arrived. I walked into the courtroom wearing a custom-tailored suit, flanked by Arthur and his senior partner. I felt completely bulletproof. Chloe walked in looking drastically different. The flashy designer labels were gone, replaced by a highly conservative, muted gray dress. She was desperately playing the role of the battered, destitute housewife. Her attorney, Bradley, opened the proceedings with an incredibly dramatic, theatrical monologue about my alleged financial terrorism. He painted a tragic picture of a woman who had entirely sacrificed her own blossoming career to tirelessly support my business from the shadows, demanding 50% of the company's massive valuation, half the equity in the house, and permanent spousal support. Then Arthur stood up. He didn't use theatrics. He used a sledgehammer of evidence. Methodical, cold, and utterly devastating. He projected Chloe's Instagram posts onto the courtroom monitor. He showed a photo of her drinking margaritas poolside in Miami with Vanessa, time-stamped on the exact dates she claimed to be tirelessly managing my corporate accounts. He presented the original LLC formation documents, proving the company was fully operational and profitable 3 entire years before I even met her. He presented the forensic accounting, showing my 7 zero-hour work weeks built the empire, while she drained the accounts. The judge, an older, no-nonsense woman, was visibly irritated by Bradley's blatant lies. When Chloe took the stand and tearfully swore under oath that she was the creative director of my hardscaping business, Arthur simply handed the judge Chloe's W-2 employment records from her marketing firm during those exact years, proving she was working full-time elsewhere and had absolutely zero involvement in my company. Mrs. Last name. The judge finally interrupted, taking off her glasses and rubbing her temples. The court finds your claims regarding the marital business to be entirely fraudulent and completely unsupported by reality. The documentation explicitly proves this company is your husband's separate, premarital asset. Furthermore, your documented dissipation of marital funds to support an extramarital affair partner severely damages your credibility in this courtroom. It was an absolute slaughter. The final judgment came down exactly as Arthur had predicted. Chloe received a one-time settlement payout that amounted to barely 4% of what she originally demanded, basically just enough to make her go away. The massive hardscaping business remained 100% mine. The premarital house remained 100% mine. She was awarded absolutely zero ongoing spousal support. The ironclad prenuptial agreement held up flawlessly. The look of absolute, hollow devastation on her face when the judge slammed the gavel was something I will cherish for the rest of my life. As we were walking out of the courthouse hallway, I overheard Tristan aggressively whispering to Chloe near the elevators. What do you mean you didn't get the payout? Chloe, my rent is due next week, and you promised you were going to cover the lease on the new studio. Apparently, financially supporting a luxury lifestyle consultant's shopping addiction wasn't in the holistic wellness coach's budget. Shocking. I sold the massive suburban house a month later. It held way too many toxic memories. And it was ridiculously huge for one single guy. I used the cash to buy a sleek, modern, industrial loft downtown, a 5-minute walk from my corporate headquarters. My business is absolutely thriving, expanding into 3 new cities. My life is incredibly peaceful, quiet, and completely devoid of dead weight. Then, the absolute final twist happened just 3 weeks ago. It was a rainy Tuesday night. I was in my garage, turning wrenches on the Mustang, when the security buzzer for my loft's ground floor entrance rang. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone. Standing in the freezing rain, looking absolutely miserable, was Chloe. She looked entirely defeated. No designer clothes, no perfect blowout, no arrogant smirk. She had lost the entitled, toxic attitude, but only because she had entirely lost the luxury lifestyle that funded it. I buzzed her into the lobby and met her at my front door. I opened it just a crack, keeping my hand firmly on the doorframe. "What do you want, Chloe?" I asked, my voice completely flat. "I need help, Marcus," she said, her voice cracking. She looked up at me with desperate, tear-filled eyes. "Tristan and I broke up. He kicked me out. He was just using me for the lifestyle he thought I was going to get from the divorce. I'm currently crashing on Vanessa's couch, but her new boyfriend hates me, and she wants me out by Friday. I literally cannot afford an apartment. The settlement money is completely gone." I just stared at her. She had blown through the settlement cash in barely 7 months, desperately trying to maintain her illusion of wealth. "Vanessa won't even return my calls anymore," she sobbed. "My parents refuse to loan me any more money. I have absolutely nowhere to go." Then came the incredibly predictable, pathetic pitch. "I made a massive mistake, Marcus. I was brainwashed. I see that now clearly. You were the only man who ever truly took care of me. We could try counseling. We could try again. I know what I threw away." I almost laughed out loud. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. "No, Chloe," I said simply. "Not an ounce of anger left in my body. That is absolutely never happening." She panicked, grabbing the doorframe. "Then, can you at least just loan me $5,000? Just until I get back on my feet? Please. I have an interview for a floor manager position at Nordstrom next week. I swear I'll pay you back." I looked at the woman standing in front of me, the exact same woman who had laughed in my face, told me I'd regret divorcing her, tried to gut my life's work in court, cheated on me in my own home, and viciously lied to my friends. Now, here she was, begging for a handout. "Chloe," I said softly, looking her dead in the eyes. "You demanded space. You demanded independence. You demanded zero contact. You have successfully manifested all of it. Good luck with your retail interview." I started to close the door. "You're really just going to leave me out here with absolutely nothing?" she cried out, her voice echoing in the concrete hallway. I stopped, reopened the door a few inches, and delivered the final truth. "No, Chloe. You left yourself with nothing. I am simply respecting your choices." Then I closed the heavy steel door for good, locking the deadbolt with a loud, satisfying click. Sometimes I look back and think about the years I wasted investing my heart and soul into someone who could throw it all away so easily for an illusion. I think about the glaring red flags I ignored, the endless compromises I made that were entirely one-sided. It was an incredibly brutal, expensive lesson learned the hard way. But I realized something important. The absolute best revenge isn't screaming, fighting, or seeking petty vengeance. The best revenge is living incredibly well, setting ironclad boundaries, and stepping aside to let toxic people face the brutal, unshielded consequences of their own horrific choices. She wanted out of the marriage. I gave her exactly what she asked for. All of it. And watching reality finally hit her like a freight train from a safe, legally protected distance, absolutely priceless. If you've read this massive novel all the way to the end, thank you for letting me vent. If any of you guys out there are going through something even remotely similar, hear me now. Stay incredibly strong. Know your absolute worth. Protect yourself legally, digitally, and financially before you ever say a word. Do not let fake tears, manipulation, or guilt trips cloud your judgment. Their choices. Their consequences. Peace out. Reddit.